Great rewards don't wait, so why should you? Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all of your Invigor hybrid canola by November 14th. Talk to your retailer. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. It is great to be with you. Well, also a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. And for the podcast listeners, we've got a news segment today in the bonus round of the show. So in order to hear the news, you got to download the RealAg Radio podcast. Lots of very interesting stuff in there. An activist investors trying to force the potential sale of CSX Railway. That's very interesting at the same time where we got Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern trying to do a bit of a merger. So a lot of interesting stuff happening in the railway sector, that and just a whole lot more. Okay. Today on the show, we've got Doug Miller from CSGA. Doug Miller is going to talk to us today about that CFIA pre-consultation report that has come out on seed regulatory modernization. Many in the industry saying that the CFIA thoughts fall very in line with what CSGA was looking for. We'll find out if Doug agrees with that. What does he like? What does he dislike? And actually, next week, we're going to hear from Seeds Canada on this same issue. Warren Bills will be with us in a product spotlight with MNP Ag Intellect. We're also going to hear today from Kyle Folk. He is the founder and CEO of Ground Truth Ag. Now, this is essentially trying to apply technology to the grain grading process, trying to assist those grain graders and providing some technology, some analysis to assist them to get through really the volume that they're dealing with and the speed at which this has to happen at this point. It's very similar to, I think, maybe the automatic strike zone. We'll see what he thinks about that comparison. We'll also hear a clip from the Truth About Ag podcast, which is hosted by Evan Schout of Maverick Ag, as well as Farmer Coach. His co-host is Christian Hebert. Christian's not on this episode. Evan's flying solo. And this guest is a repeat guest, actually. It is Dallas Simmonds, who is somebody that left the world of farming and decided to do something else with his life. This is a bit of a look back, sort of connecting, give it a bit of an update, as Dallas really talks, really heartfelt, talks about finding fulfillment in his life. Great episode. I got a clip for you. You can find the Truth About Ag podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Real Agriculture YouTube channel, as well as RealAgriculture.com. We are very happy to be partnering with both Evan and Christian on that podcast. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call that RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to break down this CFIA report on seed regulatory modernization with Doug Miller, get his insights and his perspectives from the lens of the Canadian seed grower. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
I'm Lindsay Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
With deep roots in agriculture, MNP helps farm businesses make confident financial decisions. From planning to growth, their advisors are here to support your success on the farm or the ranch across Canada. Learn more by going to mnp.ca. Okay, there's been a process that's been going on for a number of years. At least it feels that way to me. And that is seed regulatory modernization. And here to talk about the pre-consultation report that's been put out by CFIA, it is the executive director with the Canadian Seekers Association, Doug Miller. Doug, how are we doing?
I'm doing great, Shaun. Glad to talk to you about my favorite subject, seed regulatory modernization.
Really? This is your favorite?
Like all good things, Shaun. Eventually, the CFI's pre-consultations on seed regulatory modernization will come to an end. This has been a process where we're taking a step back and reimagining what Canada's seed sector needs to look like. This is a process that CSA has been heavily engaged in for the last 5 years, and we have a really strong vision of what success looks like through this process. So happy to talk with you about that.
Okay, it's like a 35-page document, so we can't go through it all. Yep. Let's start off with, based on what CFIA has put in the report, and it's pre-consultation, but there has been meetings in your group, meeting at Seeds Canada, meeting, like, if there's an organization or stakeholders connected to the seed industry in Canada, they have talked about this issue, although it may not be on the forefront for a lot of farmers. But based on what is in this Future-Proofing Canada Seeds Regulations for a Stronger Tomorrow document, what are you the most excited about?
Well, CFI has referred to this process as being robust. And let me tell you, Shaun, it has been robust. It's involved hundreds plus stakeholders coming together through task teams, pre-consultation surveys to be able to get to this point. Whenever CSJ looks at what the CFI is proposing, we see a lot of good things in here. You know, when we look at what success looks like, it's a modern seed system that is responsive to change, that is sector-led and government-enabled. You know, CFI through this is putting in key foundational pieting I'm going to use the term legislative instruments, which are going to make all your listeners kind of go fuzzy-eyed. But basically what they're doing is putting a lot of sections called incorporation by reference into the seeds regulations. What this is kind of a piece and a mechanism that allows CFIA to be able to reference documents that exist outside of regulations. Why is this important? Because it allows us to speed up future changes. So a lot of this process is about setting us up for future success. So CFI is proposing to use this process across many different parts of the seed regulations so that whenever we're ready for future change, we're able to move on it quite quickly. So an example of this would be crop kind subject to variety registration. You know, if a crop kind wanted to move within that process right now, they would have to go through a whole regulatory change. Now, in the future, this could be done through incorporation by reference, a more agile process to get the job done. Another example would be, you know, the use of drones in crop inspections. You know, that technology isn't there today, but in the future it could be. And then we could use this process to be able to fast track its adoption. So this is one area that we're really excited about. The other area would be CSJ taking on more administrative tasks from the government. And this has kind of been our main push to the process about CSJ becoming the main administrator of Canada's seed certification system. This is a model that we see internationally in mature seed systems where government delegates authority for the day-to-day work of seed systems to an entity like CSJ. You know, we've been around for over 120 years. We are a co-regulator in the space. And there's a lot of key points in here that we're going to be able to take on more work. You know, our seed sector right now really leverages alternative service delivery, which is another government buzzword, but it's just essentially the outsourcing of key work under strict parameters.
What kind of work, Doug? What kind of work?
Yeah, so an example of this would be what we currently do right now is like crop inspection. But examples that CFI is proposing in here is for like an organization like CSJ to take over the administration of the OECD Seed Schemes Export Certification Program. And so this is one, again, where it seems like an extension of our existing work, and one where we're very tapped into the OECD. The OECD is launching a new digital seed hub, hopefully this year. And CSJ was actually part of the establishment and strategy development for their seed hub. So there's a lot of great work that CSJ has been working on behind the scenes for the last number of years that is really kind of starting to take light in this proposal.
What's in this document that you take issue with when you provide your feedback? You're going to be like, oh, wait a second here.
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah, so I'd say there's 2 to 3 main different buckets for us where we have some concerns. And so I'd say that at a high level, we support about 40 of the 52 recommendations. It's all about streamlining, in our case, common sense adjustments. Where we have problems with the proposal is that it seems in some areas that CFI is taking on additional responsibilities, more enforcement. How do we reconcile that with, the current conversations coming out of government about doing more with less, potential cuts? Could this create more bottlenecks for our sector? Could this create, slower processing times of key things like variety registration applications? Again, that concerns us. I think there's an opportunity to leverage an organization like CSJ more to outsource more of that work to us. The other part would be, CFI over-regulating in certain areas. And this is more about, whenever they're putting forward policy positions, are they using regulations, or in some cases could this be done through policy or operational guidance documents? So there's a few issues that we have where they're proposing regulatory change where we think it would be more agile and more responsive to use a policy update.
Now, some would argue, Doug, that you mentioned the bottleneck and concerns over the resources over it in the government department CFIA, based on some of the there's some austerity coming for sure. But some would say that we're just moving the bottleneck. We're moving the bottleneck from CFIA and we're going to move it. And we're going to park it over at CSGA. Nothing really changes. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I would say that we're not interested in just taking over the processes as they exist. We have a lot of experience with digitization, and our main part of our thing is being able to digitize the whole seed system. In our past work in this space with the launch of our CSJ SeedCert platform, which is the main platform used by the whole seed sector to do crop inspection and how CFI oversees that, we are able to see a 1,700% increase in terms of efficiencies, in terms of being able to get certification decisions into the hands of farmers more quickly. We're planning on taking that same kind of approach, that digital first mindset, and applying it to the rest of the seed certification system, hopefully to be able to find more efficiencies. So we have a lot of interesting proposals coming forward, like our digital single window, variety profile platform. These could have big savings for the seed sector, but then also those that rely on seed as well.
Do you feel, as written, that this attracts more competition to the Canadian space in some of the crop types? Does this make Canada an easier place to do business?
Yeah, I think you have to look at this as part of a bigger conversation. When you look at the consultations that are ongoing now with PBR, looking at streamlining seed regulations, they're all part of the equation to be able to track more investments. I think we're in the right track. Obviously, we could always do more. But I think things like variety registration being a very flexible process right now do allow for that continual improvement, that if we do see irritants or we have issues, the value chain is able to address those very quickly. So I'd say that, we're all these changes combined, we're all kind of moving in the right direction.
Now, for some of the people in our audience, they're in the they're seed growers, they're with seed companies, they're in this space. But for the farmer that is getting into harvest here, and they're not necessarily living in the seed industry on a day-to-day basis, why is this SRM consultation process and this document as it stands today, why is this so critical? For them. Yeah, for them. Well,
I would say that 9 out of 10 bites of food that we consume daily start with seed. So seed is the starting point of so many of the value chains that your listeners are part of. Whether it's the ones that have direct line of sights, like the barley that goes into the beer, It's the forages that feed the cattle. Seed plays a vital role, and it's about making sure that we have a seed system that's able to keep up with the pace of innovation that's happening in our sector, but is still able to provide, trust and confidence in that seed. And so as our members are going through harvest right now, and your listeners, they're taking the crop off. And as they're making next year's decisions, there's a lot of opportunities to think about seed. But at the same time, right now, we're asking you to think about, what does the system look like? What does it need to have that brings that seed to your farm?
I think I even gave a presentation at one point to a meeting in this whole consultation process that feels like it was ages ago. At that time, I remember a push for this is an opportunity. This is there's a window here. The government's saying, what do you want to do? Right. And so it's got to think big. Do you think CFIA has thought big enough in this document?
Well, I'd say that right now SRM is coming at a really interesting time because we've just spent 4.5 years, 5 years talking about all the pain points. So when I think about the government's red tape reduction plan or the pre-budget consultations, this is the most excitement I've seen about a budget in years. We have a plan of easy wins, low-hanging fruit that the government can implement now to be able to improve the lives of farmers today. So again, what we're seeing through this is that, yes, there is some regulatory changes, and those should probably go through the existing process, but there's policy changes, there's guidance changes, there's expanding of relationships with organizations like CSGA. Those are all things that we think can be fast-tracked, especially now with the context that we're operating, to be able to, again, something as simple as being able to just be more effective. Do we need to wait 2 years if there's already broad agreement that this is the right direction? No, we should be able to get this going. So I'll be in Ottawa later this week talking to the Secretary of State about CSJ's pre-budget submission, where we talk about, there's wins in here in the SRM process for the seed sector today. Let's capitalize on these. Let's move on them, and let's not wait to go through the whole process.
We've been talking to Doug Miller. He's Executive Director with the CSGA. Doug, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, Shaun.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this.
Protect your anhydrous ammonia application earlier than normal this fall. Defend against potential losses and protect your bottom line with new Centuro A-Pro Nitrogen Stabilizer. Patented active ingredient pronitridine offers agronomically effective protection where it matters most, below ground. The new concentrated formulation lowers application rates. Start early with Centuro A-Pro as part of your nitrogen management plan. Contact your local retailer or visit centuro.ca for more information today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. It's now time for a product spotlight with MNP, and we're joined by MNP's National Leader for Agronomy Services. It is Warren Bills. How are we doing today, Warren?
I'm doing great, Shaun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're into the back end of August. Harvest is we're into it. This is the exciting time of year, man.
It is. Yeah, guys are idling in their approaches, kind of waiting for the go ahead. So.
Yeah, for sure. And we're obviously trying to achieve as much yield as we can. Obviously, given some of the cost structures that are out there for the farmer that they're facing. And we've been talking about some of the considerations around input costs and things like that throughout the growing season. I'm interested to see what the combine says about some of the yields out there. That the combine, the yield monitor, is that ultimate truth teller when it comes to some of the yields. But let's talk about optimization and what are some of the biggest opportunities you see right now for producers when it comes to having that ultimate field optimization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. The combine, as you mentioned, is somewhat the report card of the year for all the hard work and planning that went in. I think the opportunity that we are seeing really clearly inside MNP and with the team of agronomists and financial experts is, and you're going to laugh, this is coming from an agronomist, it's actually field level gross margin and thinking about gross margin at a field level. So think about having essentially a set of financial statements at a field level. And why an agronomist is saying that's one of the biggest opportunities is that's agronomy thinks at field level. Accountants often think more at farm and business level. So that blending for us is going to help really uncover where some of the most profitability is coming from on these farms when you look at it at that granular level. And it only can occur kind of through that combination of experts. So that's the biggest in my mind that we're heading into this year. When the report card comes off, we put some numbers against that, and then we can say, okay, here's where we're making money and not. So it's not just about maximum yield that helps, but it is about maximum profit.
Yeah, and we've talked before with people from the accounting side of MNP before about, two farmers sharing a fence row, same soil, same behavior by Mother Nature. Yeah. And the difference on the gross margin per acre is agronomics. We've talked a lot about that before. So often we hear people say, "Hey, success starts in the soil." Okay, share what that means from your standpoint in practical terms for producers today.
Yeah, without getting too techie or geeky on the soil stuff, which we like to do in agronomy, my view is the following. So I believe that 80% of that potential and that success, when we say success starts in the soil, comes from what's happening below ground, but we spend like 20% of our time there. So we might take a soil test. We might check our seeding depth, but then we leave everything else to kind of what's happening above ground. So kind of spending a little bit more time and attention on what's happening below is where we're finding the most success with our farms. As an example, the table stakes would be seeding depth, seeding rate, even seed singulation is showing some great success. A lot of our leading producers have invested in below ground water monitoring. And then, of course, we get into the biology of the soil, which is really the new frontier of what are the bugs doing down there and how do they interact with nutrition. And so I think it has always been maybe one of the passions of agronomists is to start with a soil test, start understanding what's going on, because that's essentially what you're putting that precious, expensive seed into.
Yeah. Now, for farmers out there that are considering signing on new acres, what can they expect when working with some of MNP's agricultural team? Yeah,
we have we're coming to market with a team, MNP Ag Intellect. We've got experts that in agronomy have been running businesses for 20 years, and now they're running them together inside this really unique, interdependent group of agronomy specialists. So we are very laser focused on the services. There's nothing that we do other than sell services and value to farm customers. We're not into any of the inputs or the equipment or that sort of thing. So the expectations is very comprehensive support, starting with the soil. We offer soil testing, strategic crop plans on top of those soil results, and even taking that information from a farm and building a crop plan that helps them optimize field level gross margin, which is what we talked about at the start. So we've got about 42 field experts now in the prairies, and we're really ready to provide that full support. If you're working with MNP on the financial side, kind of shoulder to shoulder. We get to meet together around the coffee table and then talk yield and money. So.
Yeah, it's really a holistic approach, and trying to increase that. And depending on where you farm, there's a different ideal or optimal gross margin, but it's really about achieving your potential and doing everything you can that is in your control to get across that finish line. Indeed, so I like the approach very much. So if somebody has more questions, wants more information about MNP Ag Intellect, where do they go, Warren?
Yep. So we have really a locally driven model. So if you are working with someone with MNP, you can just say, hey, I've heard about the agronomy services. I'd be interested in learning a little bit more. We do have a little bit of information on the website under agriculture, under agronomy. You're also going to be seeing a lot more about, we've continued our business with some really good high definition soil sensor mapping technology and that kind of stuff. We'll have some workshops out there. So just pay attention to some of the marketing and media. But I would say my advice is go local. Go to someone in their local office, and if you can't get a hold of them, find me on the website, and be happy to point you in the right direction.
Great stuff. We've been talking to the National Leader for Agronomy Services at MNP under the MNP Ag Intellect banner, Warren Bills. Warren, thanks a lot for joining us here today.
Thanks, Shaun. Appreciate it.
Great stuff. And of course, that website again is mmp.ca. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this.
The new Brandt XT grain cart delivers unmatched forward auger reach, side auger reach, and discharge spout clearance for easy positioning, with sight lines that allow you to actually see what you're doing while you're doing it, saving you time with each load and getting you back to the combine sooner. They say hindsight is 20/20. We say seeing what's in front of you is better. Lead the field with the new XT grain cart from Brandt.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, faba beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, get ready for outstanding emergence in 2026. Have your Vatterstad seeding and planting equipment inspected at an authorized dealer by November 15th, and you receive 15% discount on needed replacement parts. Contact your local Vatterstad dealer to learn more or go to vatterstad.com. Okay, at Ag in Motion back in July, I was roaming around, walking through the different alleyways and streets, I guess we'll call them. And one of the companies that I ran into that wanted to get a bit of more of an update on, in Saskatchewan-based innovative company doing some pretty cool stuff, and that is Ground Truth Ag. We're joined right now by Kyle Folk, who is the CEO and founder of Ground Truth Ag. Hey, Kyle, how are we doing?
Good. Thanks, Shaun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So now, I guess, what problem is Ground Truth Ag trying to solve?
Man, I mean, if I could sum it up real briefly, I would say we are trying to solve the problem of grain grading. And so grain grading has been done in this manual, laborious way for over 100 years. Since the early 1900s, it's been done virtually the same way. There's been some small changes in it, but overall, we still have humans making judgment calls, ultimately, in a very subjective kind of way. And so it's really difficult to get a straight answer, get consistency, get transparency. Causes all kinds of problems for the supply chain and, specifically on farm as well.
And I think one of the frustrations that farmers have is that the year can make a difference too. It's not just the individual grain grader. It's what's number 2 this year, maybe number 3 next year, maybe it's even number 1 the year after that, depending on the supply and what the quality of the crop is out there. That's a little bit harder, though, to remove that kind of difference from year to year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the consistency piece. I think it's, ultimately, I mean, Shaun, not uncommon for, a single farm to send multiple samples from the same pail, from the same bin, to three different, potential buyers and get three different results back. So exactly what you're saying. And year to year, as you say, that can vary as well. The reality is, in Canada, our system is based on the Canadian Grain Commission, and it's supposed to remain relatively consistent, right? Like they have their guidelines, they have their regulations that are in place. Now, there are some variations made to that, but across the board, it's supposed to remain the same. So some of these challenges come from, and hey, I'm not knocking anybody. Everybody that I've come across in the industry is doing a great job, the best that they can. But when you're handcuffed with having to make these really difficult calls on some things, it's really challenging. And so just a couple stats, Shaun. It takes up to 8 years to fully train a grader. And that's purely based on different weather patterns, different weather cycles that show up only, every 6 to 8 years. Well, if I haven't seen something in 6 years, I'm not going to be very good at identifying that 6 years later. So that causes some of those challenges that we, see. And then also, graders, we're human. We're supposed to be 80% correct from a grading perspective. And so that causes some difficulties too. And so you combine these things and ultimately you can start to understand why we see this inconsistency and discrepancy.
Now, this is sort of like, I'll make an analogy here for you a little bit as you're going through this. It's sort of like the debate right now about the computerized strike zone in baseball. Right now we have human umpires, and we have the ability through the pitch zone to know, they grade on a daily basis which umpires were the most accurate at home plate versus the ones that were not. Okay, and humans make errors, but there's like this sort of nostalgic, sort of like cultural thing around, like, yeah, it was, he was giving us a little bit more room on the outside than the inside to right-handed hitters and all that kind of stuff. But we have the technology now to be able to say, nope, it was in this box. It's a strike versus it being a ball. But we're not moving very quickly to that all computerized system. Is that kind of with the technology improving in grain grading, are we able to move to 100% where it's technology telling us what the grade is, or do we still need humans?
It's a good question. And I like the analogy. I would say the difference between grading and the strike zone is the strike zone is very finite, right? It's in the box or it's out of the box. And so you have a strike or a ball. When we get into grading, there's a wide swath of, this subjective area that we're having to deal with today. Are we going to remove that down to zero? What we like to say, Shaun, with a machine doing it, that a machine that can do it very, very well, you're going to move that wide swath down to a very narrow margin that really won't come into play anymore from, this way or that way perspective. So we can narrow that down. Now, the people, removing the umpires from the game, it's a long time, Shaun, before that happens. There's so much that goes into grading grain. Hard red spring, for example, has 50 to 60 different visual characteristics that could show up in variations. And so you're starting, statistically speaking, you're getting thousands and thousands of variations that can come through on a grain sample. It's the deterministic versus the probabilistic element. And so, someday can grain grading be entirely deterministic by a machine? I believe it fully can. Is that day tomorrow? No, it's not. And so there's going to be this path that we go on to get to that point where it becomes deterministic. And in that journey, those graders are still going to be doing their thing. But what we can do with our machine is we're really good at a number of things, and we can speed that process up for them. So, Shaun, biggest challenge that graders have today is the speed at which things need to get done. I mean, they're loading rail cars in under 4 minutes now. Yeah. That's wild. And so how do you assess grain properly when you're sampling and loading in 4 minutes? That's crazy. That's almost an impossibility. And so, they're doing the best they can. So we can help with those scenarios. We can help take care of certain things that, just becomes mind numbing for them. And so, over time that will change and shift. But right now it's an efficiency play.
So you're like a productivity assistant.
Yeah, but I think in order to be that productivity assistant, we need to be able to provide grades still, Shaun. So this is not tell them a handful of characteristics and they can do the rest. We need to provide them the full gamut so that when we provide an output, they can see, okay, that's a grade 1. Machine says it's grade 1. We have no concerns. Yep, grade 1. Whereas if you only provide a handful of characteristics, they still have to go and look for everything else. And that, it's good. It's nice to have information, but at the end of the day, it's not something that can be transacted upon.
Do we have, so I think a lot of times when we talk to the farmer audience about this topic, the anecdotes that come out are where the farmer was maybe in a losing position, where they gave me number 2, but I know it's a number 1, because I had, the 6 samples I took out, there's one company that said I could get 1 and the rest were 2. But there's also situations where probably, depending on the relationship farmers have with the company, they probably get maybe a little bit better grade than, the farmers can come in on the winning side of this as well. Do we have any idea? Are there any studies out there or data points to show what this is, what the discrepancy in grades is costing or benefiting the farmer over a number of years?
You know what? There's none that I'm aware of, Shaun. I wish there was, because it would make my pitch a lot easier. But at the end of the day, that question to me, how I summarize that question is how much. So I came from the farm, so I get it. Like, growing up, we had good relationship with our buyers, but at the end of the day, we still felt that we were bearing all the risk and that they were taking as little as possible. And that, at times we felt that maybe we were getting the short end of the stick. Since I've started Ground Truth Ag and I've gone out and started talking to all the grain buyers, I have completely 180'd on that point of view. That's not the intent. That's not what they're trying to do.
Right.
But you get this inevitable feeling of that trust becomes broken just because it's situational.
Yeah, there's a gap, right?
Yes.
I think you put that very well. I think too many times people jump to there's like something nefarious going on here.
Yeah.
Like I think you spoke to one of the main issues, the length of time of training to get, to somebody so they're like super uber good at this, or they have all of the skills in this profession, and the understaffing. Like it's hard to find people to source labor, right? And so I think there's a under-resourced component to this, and like you mentioned, also the speed of loading those rail cars, that's sort of shifted the ground here a little bit. There's Ground Truth Ag shifting the ground. Anyway, I'm helping you with your marketing, but it just, things have changed, and so we need we need as many tools as we possibly can get so that grain grader can get it done as accurately and also as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah. And so when we talk about like money left on the table and measuring that information, Shaun, I think the reason why there's no statistics around this specifically is because from a farm perspective, we never knew what we were leaving on the table. It's really hard to measure that when all you have to determine your quality, first off, Shaun, is points per million, right? We're sending a 1 to 2 pound sample that is supposed to be representative of like 40 tons. Like, how is that repeatable and usable over, so anyway, that brings a whole bunch of other things, and we're testing our equipment on combines to get more samples per quarter section, all that kind of stuff. But when you don't know, or you have no idea, so Shaun, if I have a contract book for a number 2 14.5 wheat hard red, and I harvest that first field in its harvest delivery. Well, when I'm sending a sample in that's parts per million, how do I know that I'm not giving away grade? How do I know I'm not sending in a number 1 all the time? And at the end of the day, the facility's not trying to take me for what I'm worth, but I'm busy. I maybe have a third party that's hauling that into the facility for me, and they're just dropping it off, and it's getting graded, and I'm finding out after the fact what's happening. There's a large amount on my bottom line as a farmer that I could be giving away. Also, another example, Shaun, if I'm bringing it in from the field, and I know now that bin that I've loaded all day long has been a number 1, but I know at the end of the day I loaded 2 trucks and I got to unload them at evening. If I put those in that bin, it's going to turn it into a number 3. Would I do it? So there's all these quality aspects of you can't manage what you can't measure. And so we don't know. There's been no ability to have a clear understanding on quality.
And if you could do it on the combine, that would be fantastic. You would have that information way earlier on a broader sample size than just, sort of how some of the sampling happens on the farm today. That's pretty interesting stuff. So I guess to wrap up here, Kyle, who at the end of the day, who is your customer? Is it the farmer or is it the grain company?
So the real exciting part for us was I set out, expecting that the farmer would be the main customer. Still is. Like our number one, we're always thinking about the farm, coming from the farm. That's never going to change. But once I got into this market and realized that it's not just the farmer, everybody in the supply chain experiences these same problems, Sean. So all the problems we have at the farm gate, as soon as the grain buyer takes custody of that grain, they got to move it on a contract, and they're playing a high volume, low margin game. They need to know as detailed as they can what the quality is as well. And so they run into the exact same problem. Then you have third-party inspections. So our customer base actually just goes all the way through the supply chain, which is excellent for something like this, Sean, because consistency is key. If we can get it to be the same throughout the entire supply chain, we remove all of that ability or unwanted ability for discrepancy or negotiations.
That's cool. Are you doing this with? I never even asked you how the tech works. Is it cameras or what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's machine vision cameras and then also near infrared spectroscopy using AI models underneath both of those to be able to detect all the things from protein, ergot, all the way through all the visual, insect damage, mildew damage, everything from top to bottom.
You just dropped every bloody keyword that's like possible right there. That was pretty good. I like that.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. Very cool tech. Based out of Saskatchewan, obviously very much a North American appeal there indeed. Kyle, thanks for joining us here today on RealAg Radio.
It's a pleasure. Appreciate it, Sean.
It's Kyle Folk. He is CEO and founder of Ground Truth Ag. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Although the cost per ton is higher, Rhizazorb is cheaper per acre than MAP. Rhizazorb is more efficient, therefore we use less fertilizers to deliver the same amount of phosphorus to the crop. On average, growers save $5 to $7 per acre, and Rhizazorb has a demonstrated yield increase of 3 to 5 bushels, generating a $20 ROI compared to MAP. You can go to phospholutions.com and check out our grower savings calculator and see how much you can save on your farm.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
We have a lot of different podcasts at RealAgriculture.com, and one of the podcasts that we added about a year ago is the Truth About Ag podcast that is co-hosted by Evan Shout and Christian Hebert of the Hebert Group, also farmer coach. Evan does a fantastic job as he really tries to find guests that share experiences and knowledge about how they see agriculture, really trying to look at it through a business lens. And the most recent episode that has been published is, it's a return guest, actually. It's with Dallas Simmonds. Now, Dallas is somebody that actually got out of farming. And this is a follow-up. And it is a really, really cool discussion here. And they talk a lot about trying to find fulfillment in life. And this is, I think, true for not only farmers and ranchers, but I think any entrepreneurs. A lot of real take homes here. I want to play you a clip. We don't have time for the full episode because it's like an hour, but you can find the Truth About Ag podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel, as well as our podcast network. You can find out more by going to realagriculture.com/podcast. Let's hear the conversation that Evan Shout had with Dallas Simmonds.
You are my second returning guest, so you should feel really proud, Dallas.
Awesome, I do.
Yeah, I bet you do. So for those that have just joined us since the Real Ag days, if you scroll back to episode 2 on YouTube, you will hear the initial one, which is, why does a 40-year-old farmer call it quits in the middle of his prime? But we are going to go one step further today because Dallas sat in on some of the farmer coach programs a couple weeks ago, and he said a few things to some of the growers, and I'm going to pick his brain a little more on this because I think it applies for those listening. We'll probably go a little bit off script today, Dallas, and we'll get into some of the fitness and other stuff that I know you've got an addiction for now. But for now, I'm going to start the easy one. Hebes and I had a massive bet going that you would be farming again within 3 years, and I think we have passed that line. So why are we not back on the farm?
Actually, Hebes owes me a trip to the static finals because of that.
I bet he does.
I haven't told him that I won yet, but yeah. Why am I not back on the farm? I don't know. I have honestly, the first year I missed it quite a bit, but honestly now, I still go out there every once in a while, but I don't miss it at all. My life is far better today than it was then.
Well, that's going to be good because that's where I'm leading into the first question. Because the other day, you literally told a group of my growers that if you weren't happy farming, you weren't going to be happy not farming. So I want you to go back to that comment, and I want you to go deeper on that one.
Yeah, well, I feel like that comment pertains to anything in life. I guess how I came to that is I always chased my whole life, chased happiness and chased the next thing. Like there was always like, well, this was going to make me happier. Once I get to this acreage, I'm going to be happier. Once I get the lake house, I'm going to be happier. Once I get, whatever it is, the airplane, it could be anything in anybody's life. But what I actually found is the faster you hit your goals and the more things you acquire and the more you get in life, you actually become less happy. So what I guess I meant by that comment was like, if you can't be happy with a tent and a shovel and a tree and, where you are in life at this moment, things or achieving your goals or more money or, for the people that are farming, if they're not happy farming, just because they quit, they're not going to be happy. They have to find happiness first. And then, life's a lot easier after that. Like happiness doesn't come from things. It doesn't come from hitting your goals. And maybe it gives you it does give you a quick dopamine hit for a second, but then you're chasing the next one. And so what I meant is just, you have to be able to find happiness within. It doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from things. It comes from you.
Well, and I think the funny part is, and I mean, you and I have discussed this before, and we can talk, we're going to get into the material things and all that stuff, but you were part of Strat Coach, so the gap in the gain, right? When you're always chasing, you never actually look back to celebrate where you've come from. So I think that was part of it, but it was an interesting one. And I know the guys are thinking about it because a lot of them are like, I need that next expansion. I need those next acres. That's going to get me to where I want to be. And I find that most guys go by that number and don't even realize they passed it.
Yeah. You pass it so fast. I think to even add on that is now that I sit here today and have, I guess I can see things differently, but not everybody, most people in the world that I watch are walking around, with no direction. Like, I feel like, like back to Strat Coach, knowing your goals. So your financial goals, your health goals, your fitness goals, your spiritual goals, your family goals, you have to know them. And then you have to reverse engineer. Like, you have to be able to say, okay, well, what things am I doing today that are getting me farther away from my goals, and cut all that out. And then it'll be easier to find happiness, because so many people are just staring at their phones. They have no idea where they're going because they haven't set a goal, and they're just going in circles. And then the world swallows them, and then they're unhappy. But if you could figure out where you want it to go and cut out the things that were taking you farther away from there, it gets a lot easier. But you have to establish, like, Dan preaches, know your goals. Like, establish those. Then you can go somewhere.
Which I would argue that 90% of people don't actually even have them, right? So we're talking
higher. It's probably 99.
Yeah, we're talking to a very elite set of sample that actually sets those goals, and then an elite sample that actually writes them down and accountable and all that stuff. So I want to pick your brain a little further. So you'd said that you had a bit of a downtime after you left the farm. So I want to jump into that a bit, because obviously I got lots of producers that are on that cusp of, handing over the reins, or as Dan would say, as Strat Coach, losing a bit of their purpose. So give me the story. So what did the first 12 months look like after, honestly, you woke up one day and didn't have to run out to the farm?
Well, I guess what I meant by that, when I said that a farmer coach, is like, it was just, again, back to the same thing. I thought, okay, well, you know, I've hit all my goals so far. I've got all the things, everything that I've wanted, I've bought it, and I'm not happy. So then I thought, well, if I quit farming, well, that'll for sure make me happy because I'm going to have all this time. But it actually didn't, going back to what I just said. So then it was kind of a weird time for a bit, like ups and downs, like going, wow, I just gave up like the thing I love the most and I'm not happy. And I shouldn't say like I wasn't depressed. I wasn't like, but
you were looking for a feeling. Yeah, you were looking for fulfillment and it never came.
Right. Fulfillment. That's a good word. I was looking for this fulfillment or this feeling. And I was like, well, that's for sure it. Once I quit farming, I'm going to have all this time. I'm going to do whatever I want.
Stress gone.
Right. Stress gone, which I don't feel like I felt that anyways. But anyways, so yeah, rewind back to winter 2022. I'm not farming anymore. And I didn't have that feeling that I thought, oh, well, I'll give it a couple more months. It'll come. But it didn't. So then there's always that, well, shit. I can't go back. I actually set it up so that I couldn't go back because I knew I might try to go back.
And we all thought you were going back. So
right. So I was like, well, now I gave up the one thing that I loved and I'm still not happy. I still haven't found that sensation that I've been looking for. But I have today. But it was that first year, it just took a lot of soul searching of going like, looking inward saying, it's all on me. Like I have to figure this out. It's not Evan's job to figure out, or
I can't tell you how to live. Yeah.
Right. It's my job to figure out how I'm going to become happy. And thankfully I've had a lot of time and I've done a lot of work. Like I've attended just about every, I've been in them all.
Well, we're going into this. Don't worry about that. I'm taking you down this road.
And so every one has given me a little nugget to kind of find inner peace.
Again, I highly encourage you to check out the Truth About Ag podcast. That was Evan Shout, the host, talking to Dallas Simmonds, a farmer that recently stepped away from the farm and reflecting a little bit on trying to find fulfillment in life, some really cool stuff. And encourage you to listen to the whole episode. It is a spectacular episode indeed. If you have any feedback on today's program, I would love to hear back from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Of course, you can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. We'd really like your feedback on what you heard there earlier from Doug Miller of CSGA about CFIA's report on seed regulatory modernization, if you have a thought there, as well as we talked to Kyle Folk from Ground Truth Ag about some of their technology and grain grading. Does that technology make sense to you? Could we improve the human element of grain grading? Your feedback on that and anything else that is happening in the world of agriculture. Tomorrow on the show, we got Josh Linville from StoneX talk about fertilizer. Darcy Pollock from the Western Wheat Growers is going to talk about the need for more trade infrastructure in Canada. As well, we got John Newton from Terrain talking about farm profitability and what are some of the policy decisions that could be made to try to close some of the gaps for agriculture going forward. We'll talk to John as he is out on the West Coast this week speaking at an event in California. So we got lots to chat about on tomorrow's show. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. And here we are. We're in the bonus, everybody. It is great to be with you here. Thanks for hanging around. Thanks for downloading the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Even if you miss the show on Rural Radio 147, you can always connect and do the on-demand thing through the RealAg Radio podcast. It's just one of the examples of one of the podcasts that we have. We got a lot of them. And we heard a clip from the Truth About Ag podcast today, but there's Ruminating with Real Ag. There's the Agronomist. There's Mind Your Farm Business. It just keeps on rolling. So please check out all of them. But glad you're here. And we're in the bonus today. We're going to do some news. And I always promise this when I do it. I try to do it more on a regular basis because I know many of you like us to go through the news. Well, let's do it here today in the bonus round. Now, story in the Globe and Mail. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc plans to meet with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in Washington this week. Now, that the Globe says that's just days after Ottawa announced it will remove some retaliatory tariffs on the United States, essentially matching those U.S. tariffs. The meeting is happening as talks between the two countries seemingly enter a new phase after August 1 negotiation deadline imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump did not result in a trade deal. Also should mention, I believe Carney had a July 22nd deadline that we whipped through there as well. Deadlines seem to mean nothing in the case of these talks. The Carney government appears to have shifted its focus from securing a broad trade deal to seeking relief for the aluminum, steel, and auto sectors, which have been hammered by steep U.S. tariffs. It's also casting an eye toward preserving the USMCA, which has so far proved crucial to limiting economic damage in the trade war. I encourage you to check out also the story that Kelvin posted at RealAgriculture.com late last week. And if you got our machine and tech email on Saturday, you would have seen this, okay? It is a great piece on how the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum are absolutely hammering some of the equipment manufacturers in Canada, okay? And farmers in the U.S. are taking notice because they're all of a sudden getting this line item of a massive, 50% tariff on their piece of equipment, and they're not happy. So check that out. I encourage you to do so. One of the grossest things that I can ever, it actually makes me itchy talking about it, is the first human case of the flesh-eating parasite New World screwworm has been detected in the United States, says the Department of Health and Human Services on Monday. The case involving a person who had recently traveled to El Salvador was confirmed to be screwworm by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the Maryland Health Department on August 4th. Ugh, gross. The Maryland Health Department said in a statement Monday that the resident had recovered from the infection, and the investigation confirmed there is no indication of transmission to any other individuals or animals. I'm just saying. I have a hard time believing this is going to be the last case. I just really hope, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that we're talking about a handful of people, or maybe even just this person. But this is gross. We've been talking about it in cattle, and that's one thing. Humans, not good. Also, story in the Wall Street Journal. Now, you heard one of the big potential outcomes or the strategy around the tariffs that the Trump administration is really imposing, especially when it comes to Canada and Mexico, is a look to reshore manufacturing, bring that manufacturing back to the U.S. And there's a whole debate happening amongst economists, whether that is starting to happen, not going to happen, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm just going to have to wait and see if that all works out. But story in the Wall Street Journal that AGCO for years has been trying to boost its business in the U.S. while it has held the number 3 spot in essentially a 3-company farm equipment market. But a wave of new tariffs means it will be harder to boost its standing in the country. The Duluth, Georgia company doesn't have enough U.S. sales to justify moving more production out of Europe, where most of its production and sales are. That's according to Chief Financial Officer Damon Audia. And the likely need to raise prices to offset tariff costs could further depress sluggish demand for farm equipment sales in the United States, where the company is continuing to invest. That means Fendt tractors could potentially be getting a little bit more expensive. Meanwhile, in Europe, where much of its supply chain and sales are aligned, the company could see a boost by avoiding many tariff costs that its peers, Deere & Co. and CNH Industrial face. Man, AGCO, whose brand includes Massey Ferguson, Fendt, and Valtra, is evaluating whether to shift its supply sources in instances where it has more than one distinct source for a particular component, according to the CFO. That could mean moving from suppliers in Europe to ones in the U.S. or from Western Europe to Eastern Europe. The company is also looking to push its suppliers to be more efficient with the operations to limit the tariff costs they pass on to AGCO, according to that CFO audio. Now, this is kind of what we heard in the John Deere earnings. There's 2 ways, though. So there was the front loading. We're getting through that inventory. Now to deal with the tariff costs, John Deere was talking about $500 to $600 million in this fiscal year of tariff costs. One of the ways to do that, pass on the cost to the farmer or put some pressure on the supply chain. Sounds like AGCO's trying to take that route, which will try, at least an attempt in the short term, to keep those farm machinery prices static, especially at a time where demand is very weak in the United States. We've got new port facilities in Churchill, Manitoba, plus an expansion of the Port of Montreal. They are among the first major infrastructure projects Ottawa will support, according to Prime Minister Mark Carney. Speaking in Berlin at a news conference with Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Mr. Carney also announced an agreement with Germany to cooperate on critical minerals, including co-funding new projects. The agreement did not outline specific projects or timelines. We've reached out to the entity that is looking to make this major investment in Churchill for year-round shipping, and hopefully have an interview this week or next. The Bank of Montreal CEO is cautiously optimistic about the economic outlook. So the Bank of Montreal, the CEO sounded a note of cautious optimism on North America's economic outlook on Tuesday as the lender boosted its share buyback program after reporting stronger than expected financial results. Darryl White, CEO at the country's third largest bank, the country being Canada, said the business uncertainty created by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies has receded in recent months. He said ahead of the potential renegotiation of the trade pact between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico next year, the economy is proceeding as expected, neither robust nor recessionary. Now, it didn't really talk about it in the article, but over the weekend, I was reading a lot of different pieces and numerous financial publications, a lot of concern about stagflation in the United States. Meanwhile, speaking of economic conditions specific to BMO's loan loss provisions came in at $797 million during the quarter. That's compared to $906 million a year ago. So less loan loss provisions this year compared to this time last year for the bank. PV Mart. This is a story that I think Real Agriculture broke. PV Mart is set to reopen in Alberta later this year following last year's closure of the Canadian farm and ranch retailer. According to the company, a group of investors under a private numbered company has acquired the rights to the PV Mart name and intellectual property and intends to relaunch the brand debt-free. The first stores are slated to reopen in the late fall of 25, including locations in Spruce Grove, Westlock, Camrose, Lacombe, with longer-term plans for 7 to 12 outlets across Alberta and Saskatchewan. Pro Farmer had their crop tour last week, and the numbers came in quite a bit lower than what we saw for that August 1st WASDE report. As more than 100 crop scouts traversed dirt roads and two-lane highways in a story on AgWeb, stopping dozens of times to sample corn and soybeans in 7 Midwest states. They gathered insights to answer the question on many farmers' mind for the week. How would the Pro Farmer Crop Tour estimates compare to the numbers that USDA NASS released on August 12th? The answer? According to Rhonda Brooks, who wrote this story, Pro Farmer Scouts found a big corn crop, but one that currently positioned to average about 182.7 bushels per acre. Now, that is 6.1 bushels below USDA's 188.8 bushel projection just a week prior. Quote here, when we put the yield estimate out, it comes with a plus or a minus 1% for corn and a plus or minus 2 for soybeans. And that's because we know things can change, says Chip Flory, host of Agri Talk, also friend of this program. I guest hosted Chip's show Agri Talk on Friday, and I think I'm doing it also this Friday. So check that out as well. The other thing according to Flory, the other thing is the yield models that we use give us a range, and then based on conditions, we can move within that range with the yield estimate that we're going to pull. Okay, so that was from Flory. So continuing with the article from Brooks. With that perspective in play, here's how the Pro Farmer and USDA estimates compare. Pro Farmer, like I said, they're projecting a lower yield. So the ranges are 180.9 to 184.5. The estimated volume, 16.042 to 16.366 billion bushels. And also USDA is saying 16.7 bushels and like I said, a yield of 188.8 bushels per acre. So very, very fascinating. Now, I've seen some commentary where people think we're going to be maybe the upper end of that Pro Farmer estimate, the 184.5 is probably where much more of the trade is. Boy, a 180.9 would be a good song for the markets. Maybe not so for some of those farmers dragging down that average, but definitely a good story for the markets if that was to happen. In the railway sector, there's a lot of stuff happening. We got this Norfolk Southern Union Pacific potential merger happening, but we're also seeing an activist investor and Cora putting pressure on CSX to explore a deal. So activist investor and Cora Holdings told railroad operator CSX that it should deal with a rival or put a deal together with a rival or replace its chief executive if it doesn't. According to a letter reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, the hedge fund said it prepared to launch a proxy fight for board seats later this year if CSX doesn't heed its advice. The pressure comes just weeks after Union Pacific talked about this $71.5 billion deal to acquire Norfolk Southern. And interesting stuff interesting times in the railway sector. And Cora had agitated at Norfolk Southern, landing 4 seats on its board ahead of the tie-up. Following the deal announcement, industry watchers have zeroed in on what could come at CSX, which, like Norfolk, is a major East Coast carrier. And Cora believes CSX could explore deals with both the BN, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern. In their letter, the hedge fund also wants the company to appease anxious investors by formally announcing that it has hired an investment bank to explore strategic options. It is really so. One of the things that I heard last week when I was at the TEGMA conference, there was a railway analyst who we're going to try to have on the show here about mid-September. He was speculating that it's CN that's really on the outside of all this. CN does not have a dance partner. If CSX goes with the BN, CN's really left on the outside. I'm curious, and I'm making up rumors here, so just bear with me. I'm full disclaimer. What is the reaction in Canada if, like, the BN said, okay, we can't come together with the CSX, we're going to buy CN? Like, we're talking right now a lot about the merger and acquisition attitude in the U.S. related to these railway mergers. What's the reaction in Canada? Of course, we were coming off of the CPKC merger that went through. That was according to some older rules the STB used as a test. Now with the STB, the Surface Transportation Board has to use these new rules in evaluating the Norfolk Southern Union Pacific deal. So this is fascinating. And it's not like we're going to see a whole bunch of new railway startups just happen, right? That's the other part of that. Like, it's not like, just all of a sudden, hey, you know what we're going to do? Let's start a railway. That's not happening. That's not happening. So if the merger goes through, the one less is the one less for quite a while, you would probably think. And the other factor here is, how much weight, if the CPKC and the CN have a lot of real negative things to say about the impact of this merger or this acquisition of Norfolk and Union Pacific, does that carry any weight with the STB and with the Trump administration? I'm not so sure. I'll give you another one. I'm making stuff up. We saw this week that the Trump administration, the U.S. government has taken a 10% stake in Intel. What if that happened with the railway in the Norfolk Southern Union Pacific deal? We'll approve it, but we're taking a 10% stake in it as, national security, strategic asset. It is a fascinating time right now when it comes to corporate M&A for sure. That's all the time we have for the news. If you have any feedback, like I always say, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thank you so much for downloading the Real Ag Radio podcast. Really appreciate it. And we'll chat with you again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.